Welcome, everybody. Welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome, fellow deplorables. Welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Sharron Engel, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network with a shout out to the listeners in Jacksonville, Tampa, and the Villages, Florida, Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada, Macon, Georgia, Lancaster and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Boulder and Colorado Springs, Colorado, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Long Beach, California, and as our producer Rick Trader would say, we are everywhere, we are everywhere. And today I'm joined by my co-host, George Landrith. Welcome, George.
It's good to be here. This is the place to be.
Well, tell me, George, what's on your mind today? There's lots in the news. After a weekend, there always is lots in the news.
Absolutely. Well, I tend to gravitate towards stories that kind of show the disingenuous nature, the dishonesty, the just the failure of the media to be a reasonably fair arbiter of what's going on. They always tell the story in a way that's sometimes as much as half true, but oftentimes not barely even that. And I know it's some people call it media bias. I don't, because I think bias is subtle. It's generally not intended. It's not purposeful. It's kind of just built into you. It's the way you see the world, and so you're kind of accidentally biased, not on purpose usually. At least that's the way I understand the word. But here, I think this is fully, purposeful. It's their intention, and it goes beyond bias. It's not subtle. They're actually being affirmatively dishonest. They're lying to us half the time.
That's what I believe.
An example of that was the story of the tragic shooting at the synagogue in San Diego. The stories coming out, of course, there's always this rush to it's the fault of guns, it's the fault of conservatives, or it's the fault of Donald Trump. And on each of those three counts, it turns out guns were the thing that ended it. And, so it didn't go on any longer. And the perpetrator, who I'm not going to bother naming because I don't want him to be famous. I just like to see him put an electric chair and light him up like a Christmas tree. But bottom line is he hated Donald Trump. He has a manifesto out, so I'm not surmising what his views are. He tells us he hates conservatives, he hates Donald Trump, and one of the things he hates about conservatives and Donald Trump is that conservatives and Donald Trump seems to like Jews too much, as he would phrase it. They're too supportive of Israel. They're, and so forth. And he has all kinds of kind of less than acceptable ways of expressing those thoughts. But the bottom line is his accusation is Donald Trump likes Jews too much, so I hate him. Okay, well, you can't then blame Donald Trump for the anti-Semitism problem, because the murderous anti-Semite, thinks that Donald Trump's too kind-hearted towards Jews. So anyhow, it's very frustrating. The news media doesn't really tell you that. They leave you hanging, thinking and explaining the story in a very different way.
Well, I would like to mention a name with regard to that, and that's a guy who's a combat vet who went into that synagogue with his gun and stopped, as you said, the violence there. His name is Stewart, and that's his last name. I don't see a first name here. He's 51 years old. He's a combat vet from Iraq, and he just went in and he stopped it and he chased the gunman down. So this guy's a brave, courageous fellow, and as you said, it's guns that stop the violence there, not necessarily are they the bad guy in all of this. And that's that some more of that lying propaganda from the left is that guns are bad and that we shouldn't have them to protect ourselves, that somehow this protection is going to come from law enforcement. It was all over but the shouting by the time the law enforcement folks arrived, and this Mr.
Right.
Stewart had that guy cornered in his car.
That's just a reality. They cannot be everywhere.
That's right.
So they have to wait for a call to direct them to, if they're actually physically there when the shooting starts, you're lucky. But you won't always be that lucky because it's a big country, a lot of ground to cover, and and generally shooters look around to see if there's police nearby. I mean, that's, they're
sure. They're not
so
stupid,
on some
just
level,
insane.
I wouldn't be surprised to find there's, a policeman there, generally speaking. And so they have to get a call and be directed to go there. And that's an eternity if the guy's shooting at you. And you've got to be hoping there's someone there, like that combat vet, Mr. Stewart, who can intercede and intervene and stop the carnage. And my understanding is the rabbi, while unarmed, was very brave, and so it's always heartening to see the bravery that people exhibit in these sorts of horrible experiences. Even though I kind of wish we just didn't have these horrible experiences to exhibit bravery, and it'd be nice if all that bravery could just be there and we don't even have to know about it because there's never an event where they have to do it. But I have to say I think their names should be, those kind of people should be trumpeted from the housetops. The perpetrator, he can remain nameless as far as I'm concerned. We can put him in an unmarked grave for all I care.
Well, it's interesting that Mr. Stewart named who he said was the real hero, and that's a 60-year-old woman, Lori Gilbert Kay, and she threw herself in front of the rabbi to save the rabbi. So she was killed, and the rabbi was injured. But it's just amazing that people are so self-sacrificing in situations like this. And that he would say she's a real hero. She really is. For someone to say that they hate Jews, this was a true Jewish hero. There's no greater love than a man lay down his life for another, and that's exactly what she did. So
absolutely,
it's an amazing thing to see these real courageous stories in this day and time. We think that sometimes courage is lost. I mean, look at our silly Congress. We can't even have guys with the courage to stand up for their own convictions and say this is wrong.
Right.
Or
to cast a difficult vote. Right.
Or even to criticize things that are going on with our colleagues. Like I think of Ilhan Omar and her embrace of the Muslim agenda and the way that she comes out so forcefully anti-Semitically, and yet they don't say a word. There's not a peep about some of the things that go on within the Muslim.
In fact, they defend her.
Yeah.
It's not just they're silent, they actually defend her and act as if it's an act of some sort of Islamophobia to be critical of her statements. And that's got to be offensive to rational, reasonable Muslims who say to themselves, that woman does not represent my views. I know a few people kind of in that camp, and it's amazing to me that members of Congress can't have a similar willingness to speak up and say, that person does not speak for me or my party or any sane American, and yet they defend her.
Well, and that's
pretty sad.
You're absolutely right, George, as far as her own party going along with this silently, allowing this kind of anti-Semitism to be just dispersed indiscriminately, as far as I can see, with tweets and all kinds of stuff. She's truly an embarrassment, it would seem, to their party. And also another piece of that whole agenda, that inconsistency, that lying. They've lied to the homosexual community as far as where they stand on their stuff. Here's a story about Saudi Arabia mass executing 5 beheadings, 5 gay guys. So here they say, well, we embrace you, and we embrace Muslims, and we embrace the Muslim agenda, but the agenda, Sharia law, is we kill these guys. We don't do diversity in
Right,
that
right.
camp.
But if you listen to Mayor Buttigieg or whatever his name is, the biggest problem for the LGBTQ RST WXYZ group is Mike Pence. And it's just there's no sense of realism here. If you looked at the sorts of things that Mike Pence has said about the mayor, they're all complimentary. He always says, that he had a good relationship with him as governor. They worked together on things that mattered, and I've never heard him say a single mean thing about him. And yet this guy thinks that Mike Pence poses the greatest risk. Yeah, whatever. You guys are crazy.
Well, we have to go to a break, George, and we'll be right back. We're coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and AM FM 24/7. And now you can watch our show, our TV show, on the AUN TV network in Northern California. George and I will be right back to introduce our guests for the day, so stay with us.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America. And get this, did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Conservative Commandos radio show. We want to give a shout out to our listeners in Jacksonville, Tampa, and the Villages, Florida, Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada, Macon, Georgia, Lancaster and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Boulder and Colorado Springs, Colorado, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Long Beach, California. We are everywhere, as Rick Trader, our producer, says. George, we got a great lineup for this show today. Our first guest is Paul Driessen, who is a senior policy advisor for the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, CFACT. and an author of articles and books on energy and environmental and human rights issues. Our next guest is David Horowitz, a founder of the David Horowitz Freedom Center and author of many books and pamphlets published over the last 20 years. Through his work at the Freedom Center, David Horowitz has fought many important political battles, including exposing the deadly intentions of adherents to radical Islam and their stealth jihad in America, challenging left-wing indoctrination of our nation's K-12 public schools and universities, and advocating for colleges to withdraw funds from terrorist-affiliated campus organizations such as Students for Justice in Palestine. He's coming on to talk to us about an article he wrote, "The Persecutors and the Persecuted. Democratic Bigots Will Destroy the Country." Once more, I couldn't agree more. We've got the bigotry, but it isn't in our side where they're accusing us. It's actually on the other side. And by the way, David is the best-selling author of Dark Agenda, The War to Destroy Christian America. Our final guest is coming to us again, our friend Liz Peek, who is a Fox News contributor and a columnist for The Hill and FoxNews.com. She's a weekly guest on several Fox business shows, including Varney and Company, Making Money with Charles Payne, After the Bell, Evening Edit, and appears frequently on the Neil Cavuto's Coast to Coast show. Liz was a top-ranked research analyst covering oil field companies and the director of international research for her firm. We've asked Liz to discuss her article, "The Trade Deal Failed Because Beijing Hasn't Earned Our Trust." That's correct, really, isn't it, George? They haven't earned our trust. We tried to make a deal with them several times, and they keep reneging on that deal.
And this isn't the first time. I mean, we have to be honest. In the past, when we've had arrangements with them, international law, you go before the WTO, they lose, and there's no self-enforcing way. The way the WTO works, the World Trade Organization, is you bring a matter before them, and then if you win, you agree to the solution that they've provided. And China never does. They just always, yeah, never mind, we don't care. So it's there is no World Trade Police that enforce the ruling. It's basically based on goodwill and the idea that we want to try to be fair and reasonable, have a system that, in the same way that we do in our society, when you just look at kind of how we have the rule of law. We kind of agreed that, we have this convention, there's stoplights and stop signs, and we're going to abide by those. We all kind of do it voluntarily, 99.9% of the time, simply because it works. China won't do that. They're the kind of guy that just, comes up to the stoplight and comes roaring through it regardless and says, I don't care. And then when the policeman pulls them over, they won't pull over. And if they get a ticket or they're found, guilty of violating the law, they flip the bird and say, I don't care. And there is no policeman to haul them off to jail for that kind of behavior in the international arena. So they haven't earned our trust. In fact, they've actually done the opposite. They have a consistent track record over the last 50 years of being economic cheaters and people who don't abide by the law. So, I think that the point that Liz is making is dead on correct.
Well, it would be really interesting to hear from Liz. I want to hear from you as well on this bigotry. We're talking about this idea, the bigots. We're accused of it all the time. Anytime, they think they can figure out what we're thinking behind those words. Well, she said this, but she really meant, and of course we all know that's because she's a racist and a bigot. I've gotten that so many times. If you read between the lines, you can tell what she's really thinking. But that's
pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't go for the other side, does it, George?
Does not seem to. It seems to me that if you're a conservative and you state something that's factually accurate, but perhaps a little, maybe you didn't say it in the most clear fashion, that they will accuse you because you were unclear of being a bigot, a racist, homophobe, whatever it is they want to accuse you of. But, if you're a Democrat, you can say things that are outright bigoted, outright anti-Semitic, outright outrageous. And the answer is, oh, well, you misunderstood them because you're stupid. It's like, oh, okay. So if only my IQ were higher, I would have not seen that as anti-Semitic. The example would be Representative Tlaib recently. Made some comments that are historically absurd. I read an article that was a European article from a bunch of reviewed with a bunch of leftist history professors, and they all agreed that what she's saying was utter nonsense. They didn't necessarily think she was an anti-Semite, but they said historically it was utter nonsense. But I guess what I would argue is if you believe utter nonsense like she does, it's because she was trained from a child by people who are fiercely anti-Semitic, which is why they teach nonsense, because that's how you get to where you want to go, is you rewrite history and tell a different story than is factual. We've seen that with Ilhan Omar. She thinks that what happened in Mogadishu was some sort of American imperialism. We were trying to take over. No, we were delivering food to people. The warlords, the local warlords, were starving and killing. But okay, fine. You can rewrite history if you'd like. And that's the result. That sort of misreading of history is the result of hate. It's not ignorance. It's hate. That's how you misread history that badly, is you hate so badly that you will reconstruct a story that makes you feel good. That's completely false. And I think that's clearly going on with Ms. Tlaib, and we've seen that with Ilhan Omar. But their party rallies around them, defends them, and castigates those who point out that what they're saying is hateful.
Well, on that note...
It's great to be a Democrat, though.
I know. It's hard to be an American sometimes and an American patriot with that kind of stuff coming at you almost daily. It feels like in the public arena, I have friends that have said, well, I just don't want to talk about it anymore. If I know that I disagree with a person, I just avoid the conversation because it's just not worth the time to spend. As you said, these people really have been taught an agenda that's ignorant, that's hateful, it's mean-spirited, and they will shout you down every time. Why spend your time with that? And yet, when we all take that backseat attitude, what it gives us is a backseat American who really gives up their First Amendment rights. So I think in some regard we have to speak out if we expect this to change.
We can't let the lunatics run the asylum.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and AM/FM 24/7. And now you can watch us on the AUN TV network in Northern California. George and I will be right back with our first guest after this break.
AM/FM 24/7 Roku channel broadcasts all of our shows on demand. To ensure reliability, we store and stream our content on the same servers as Netflix and Amazon. Our Roku channel is free to use, and anyone owning one of the more than 10 million Roku devices can watch our channel at no cost whatsoever. If you have a television show or are thinking about producing a show, you can be a part of AM/FM 24/7's Roku channel. Watch our great shows on your Roku device. It's free and more reliable than cable TV. Are you stuck with a timeshare? Did you attend the presentation and were seduced and enticed into buying that great vacation and investment? Now you're in the terrible position of trying to figure out a way to get out of that mess. You're not alone. For over 15 years, BuyYourTimeshare.com has been helping people like yourself get out of timeshare ownership. The fact is there is no resale market. Unscrupulous telemarketers call you and say they have buyers waiting, and the next thing that happens is you give them hundreds of dollars for an ad, and you'll never hear from them again. Another fact is that an identical timeshare to yours is being offered on eBay for $1, and no one is buying it. If you want out of your timeshare, I urge you to go to BuyYourTimeshare.com or call them at 877-94-HELP-ME. That number again is 877-94-HELP-ME. BuyYourTimeshare.com. That's buyyourtimeshare.com. 877-94-HELP-ME.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landrith. I'm Sharron Engel, and we've got our first guest ready. George, I want to introduce Paul Driessen, who is a senior policy advisor for the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, CFACT, and an author of articles and books on energy and environmental and human rights issues. Paul, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thanks, Sharon. It's nice to be back with you and George.
Well, it's great to have you here, and we want to talk to you about an article that you wrote, Fear, Loathing, Intolerance, and Worse. The climate-fearing capitalism-loathing left cannot abide questions or differing opinions. That seems to be the thing that's going on more and more these days. Talk to us a little bit about what you think is driving them.
Yeah, I think what's driving it is basically a fear and a loathing of anybody's contrarian opinions. Anybody that disagrees with them is a threat to them, a clear and present danger to their attempts to take control of our country, our energy, our living standards, our lives, and the whole public domain, really. I think at some level, many of them anyway, feel that they've been put on Earth because they're wiser than anybody else, and they're here to kind of govern everyone and make things right. People on our end of the political spectrum, in the middle of this political spectrum, may not agree with that, and therefore we need to be marginalized, censored, silenced. Our views need to be kept out of the public discussion.
Well,
I think
you use some pretty harsh similes maybe or metaphors here or maybe comparisons, but you talk about the Nazis burning books, and you also talk about the word totalitarian. Now, in their mind, you would be on the ban you from whatever media list because you even dared to use those words. But talk about why you think these are Nazi totalitarian tactics.
I'm not calling them Nazis as such. I'm saying the Nazis engaged in book burning and then took some rather more extreme measures to silence their political and other opponents. And I'm saying the left these days, number one, is engaging in a lot of electronic book burning, as well as trying to prosecute people like me for denying the reality of man-made climate change, as they put it, or from my perspective, questioning, denying claims that human beings have taken over the role of the sun in governing climate, and that somehow we are now able to control Earth's climate, stabilize climate that has never been stable, and do it just by controlling fossil fuels and carbon dioxide emissions. So that is that climate change, fossil fuels debate is their key, their ticket to planetary governance. And if they lose on that, they're going to lose their efforts to be governing. And I also have labeled their basic game plan as fascism. And I'm going to read the definition I use for fascism that I've found online and elsewhere, and it's different from socialism or communism in that it doesn't own the factories and industries. But what it does, it's a political system in which authoritarian government, which they are definitely looking at, does not own the businesses and industries, but strictly regulates and controls their actions, their output, their rights, their activities. And at the same time, it constrains and suppresses citizens and their thought, speech, and access to information. So that is a fascist system, and that, I think, is what we're looking at here. They would bristle at that term because they claim they're the anti-fascists, but everything they do and how they want to run the economy is basically in sync with fascist points of view and economic theory. They may not go as far, I hope, as the Nazis and their ilk have done over the years, but they definitely have a totalitarian streak, and that's what we have to be fighting against.
Well, you mentioned one of our favorites, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in your article. Talk to us a little bit about her.
Well, she has said she has no problem whatsoever with the massive government control and intervention that it would take to implement her Green New Deal. And she has no problem with our accepting trillions of dollars in new debt in order to implement her plans. She is also pretty unfriendly to contrarian points of view. She's very good talking to her own audience, her own band of followers on Twitter and Facebook and so forth, but she doesn't like to engage in discussions with the likes of me or you. So I think we're dealing with the same sorts of things, but her vision for this country to shut down what is 82% of all the energy we use, the fossil fuels, and 100% of the petrochemicals that are used in so many other applications, would have devastating consequences for our living standards, our lives, our jobs, and so forth. So I think we need to have this debate. What the folks on her end of the spectrum want is a discussion debate only on how fast we move to a fossil fuel-free economy, and how much government control that we give them, how quickly. They don't want to talk about whether or not we really do face a man-made climate change catastrophe, which I don't think we do. So I think that's the fundamental roadblock or conflict that we're having here, and we need the discussion, the debate over this whole issue of climate change reality first and foremost, before we even start to talk about wind, solar, biofuels, battery technologies, and things like that.
Well, and I think you raise a really good point in your article about the countless plastics that are made from 100% fossil fuels. She seems to be pretty good at using her computer to Facebook and tweet and do all that she needs to do to get her message out. But I look at my computer and it's mostly plastic. And I look at my cell phone and it's mostly plastic. I'm just wondering, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea. Maybe we would stifle some of this these free thought folks, where they can't seem to tolerate our attitude if we went back to just pen and ink and things like the Federalist Papers.
We wouldn't have a whole lot of that either, and in fact, Ocasio-Cortez would be cold, hungry, naked, and free of any social media if we didn't have fossil fuels. And it's not just the plastics, the copper, all the metals that go into your computer and any other thing in your life are possible only because of fossil fuels. The clothes that are made from cotton are possible only because of fossil fuels, because that's the only way we get to run our farms and gin the cotton and weave it and dye it and transport it. So nothing we have today in our lives is possible without fossil fuels. She just cannot seem to understand that very basic situation.
Well, she would usher in the apocalypse, wouldn't she? Because I read in my Bible there, it says, you say you are rich, but you're really poor and naked and wretched. And that seems to be where we'd be headed in an AOC America. But we need to go to a break right now. We're coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and AM FM 24/7. And now you can watch us on the AUN TV network in Northern California. George Landrith, my co-host. I'm Sharron Engel, and we'll be right back with our guest, Paul Driessen, after this message.
I saw voter fraud with my own eyes. Now, people say, why didn't you report it to the authorities? Well, they were the ones doing it.
The integrity of one man, one vote doesn't apply at the Texas state legislature. There is no way to know if your representatives are voting for themselves.
Department, a Republican reaches back to vote for Democrat Oliveira. Democrat Matt Reynolds votes for Republican England.
2 out of 3 voters nationwide believe that voter fraud is a serious problem in the U.S. today.
The process is rigged.
Both sides of the aisle are guilty.
Florida now has to tell the Department of Justice whether the state will comply with DOJ's demand to stop purging thousands of people from its voter rolls.
We have the sloppiest election system of any industrialized democracy.
Philadelphia flagged 50,000 duplicate registrations, so just think how many more slipped through.
It's almost impossible to detect. How do you get caught? You only get caught if you confess.
Election corruption is deeply embedded in America. Quote, election fraud is a crime that usually pays, unquote, writes Tracy Campbell in his book, Deliver the Vote, A History of Election Fraud, an American political tradition from 1742 to 2004. In 1742, the first Prime Minister of Britain in the American colonies, Robert Walpole, was forced to resign.
We have a right not to have our vote canceled out by someone who shouldn't be voting, someone who's an illegal alien, someone who's a felon not eligible to vote, someone who doesn't exist. If they vote, they cancel your vote out as much as if you're prevented from voting.
If this is going to be fixed, it's going to have to be a citizen effort. It comes down to, it's the same old question, if not now, when? If not us, then who?
This is huge. This is about the democracy and the principles of the United States of America. People say, but why you? Why you? Why? Well, why not? And if it starts with a fireman, if it starts with a sanitation worker, if it starts with a teacher or a nurse or a caretaker of the elderly, then so be it. It's got to start somewhere. But it's time we come together and fix this problem once and for all.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections.
To say that it doesn't exist is an outright lie.
Serious allegations of voter fraud, the claims raising questions about the
Commerce Secretary Ron Brown and 32 others were on a military plane that crashed today in a violent storm. There are no known survivors at this time.
The U.S. Army was funded by the evil entity.
I saw voter fraud with my own eyes.
To say that it doesn't exist is an outright lie.
The process is rigged.
People die and fall for the right time. It's too many times.
So it's incredibly important now that we draw a line and say, not on our watch.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos, the radio show and the television show. Thankfully, we are carried not only in the Conservative Commandos radio network, all across this great nation, but also on the AUN TV network. And of course, we're always carried on Al Gore's amazing internet. We truly are everywhere. And well, I'm George Landrith, and I am here with Sharron Engel. We're your co-host today. This truly is the place to be. And we just want to remind you, if you want to hear a rebroadcast or see a rebroadcast, view one, you can go to our website, ccrsnetwork.com, ccrshow.com. It's all there. Now, we've been talking with Paul Driessen, and I should probably disclose, Paul's been a friend of mine for many years. We first met each other in the sandbox I'm joking, not quite that early, but it's been a while. At any rate, so Paul, but he is a senior policy advisor at the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, CFACT, which of course is an organization that triggers people like AOC, because he brings fact and analysis and information to bear when she would prefer to have a fact-free conversation. And thanks to people like Paul, she can't do that. But anyhow, Paul, it's great to have you on the show. We're glad you stuck through the break. We really appreciate it. I wanted to ask you just to start off as we talk about this. Energy really matters, and it's fine to talk about energy in terms of if we just could get rid of energy, if we could just operate off of wind or solar or something like that. That all sounds great in theory, I suppose, but in practice, the modern world is what it is today because of fossil fuels. And I don't mean just that we can travel all around the globe in just a matter of hours. I mean things like we can sustain life. We have babies that are premature that used to die that can now be put in incubators. All of these things are advances, quality of life improvements that were made possible by these technologies that people like AOC think are just unspeakable. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, what it would mean to America, and then let's go to the third world and ask ourselves what it would mean to their development, their hopes of ever becoming a first world country with life expectancies and the sorts of things that we take for granted, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's an excellent introduction to something I've been writing about for a long time. My book, Eco-Imperialism, Green Power, Black Death, gets into that very heavily. And the reality is, we didn't start moving out of our very primitive life on the edge existence as human beings until around 1810, 1820, when we started using coal as the first fossil fuel. Life expectancies back then were in the early 40s. Even by 1900, they were only around 47 for Americans and a lot lower elsewhere. And if you look at the progress, our living standards, our health, and our longevity all began with fossil fuels. The improvements from 40 years, 47 years to the 78 years of age that we can expect in today's America began and are sustained with fossil fuels. And what you see in Africa and other poor developing countries or undeveloped countries is horrid living conditions, health, nutrition, horrid longevity. Kids still dying, about a third of them before they reach age 5 in these countries, and adults on average not living much past 40. So to tell these countries they should not have fossil fuels means that they have to live on whatever health and living standards, lights, refrigeration, and so forth are made possible by a few wind turbines and solar panels. And that means they're going to be condemned to living maybe a little bit better than they do now, but not much. So Ocasio-Cortez and the environmentalists, the Greenpeaces and Sierra Clubs of the world are basically telling them, well, we want to improve your living standards, but not very much, because if you become middle class, you'll take too many resources out of the earth, and that would hurt the planet even more and contribute more to climate change. So our hope is that you'll be content with slightly improved lives, but not much. And that, to me, is just totalitarian, eco-imperialistic, carbon colonialism, and it means that we're going to condemn millions of them year after year to premature death. children and parents and elderly people alike. And that, to me, is immoral and unethical. The very things that they rail about are what they are guilty of.
It is interesting that the left spends so much time projecting. They look in the mirror and they see their own ugliness, and then they lay that over top of everyone else and pretend that that's their problem. And the reality is, you and I never wake up in the morning asking ourselves how we can control and dominate other people's lives, how we can lock them into their current circumstance and not allow them to improve. In my perfect world, we'd all be millionaires. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it'd be awesome if the minimum wage were we were all millionaires. I just want the marketplace to do it because I think that's the best way to do it. I don't think regulation will do it. But they on the one hand talk about they're for the little guy, and on so many different levels, it's clear they do not care about the little guy. They don't care at all.
No, they don't. And they don't like the little guy very much. I think a lot of their programs are racist. They're certainly lethal. They may not be imposing death on people here in the United States, despite their totalitarian approach to things, but they're imposing death on people all around the world. And I think your point about projection is absolutely true. We've been battling this for a long time, and yet they haven't budged an inch on any of their policies, no matter how often you confront them. But they are very uncomfortable with being labeled carbon colonialists, eco-imperialists, eco-manslaughterers. And they are.
We're running short on time. I've got one more question, and I was just going to ask you this question, which is, as we engage in this debate, more and more we're hearing that speech is action. It used to be that you could say whatever you want, but you couldn't do whatever you want. So now they're saying speech is action. So when you say these sorts of things, when I say these sorts of things, when Sharron says these sorts of things, we are taking action, and therefore government power should be able to regulate us. How serious a threat is that to a free society where we can all think and disclose and have conversations and discuss things and debate?
I think it's clear and present danger to all of fundamental freedoms and rights that we've enjoyed and that have made American prosperity and innovation possible. We need to be able to get down there and have an open, robust debate. What they want is to be able to insult and infuriate anyone on our side and get away with it, threaten any of us with fines and imprisonment and get away with it. But they don't want us to be able to engage in even respectful debate if we use any kind of tough language, which they use on a regular basis. So the bottom line is we need to have these open-ended debates right now on all these fundamental policy issues before they get a chance to just ram things through by saying, well, we have 97% consensus on climate change.
Yeah, exactly. Paul, tell our listeners and our viewers how they can follow your work so that they can look you up and when, they don't have to wait for the periodic times when you're on the show, but they can always follow the things you're talking about.
There's three great places to go. One is cfact.org, cfact.org, townhall.com, go to the columnists, and What's Up With That, as well as many, What's Up With That, WATTS, upwiththat.com. Great climate website. My articles are carried on those sites as well as many others around the country and around the world.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Paul. It's been great to have this conversation with you, just very enlightening, and I think it lets people know what's at risk. And it's an important discussion. But we are up against the break. We're up against the clock. It sometimes rules us like a cruel taskmaster, but that's how it is. But you are listening to Conservative Commandos. I'm George Landrith with Sharron Engel, and we, of course, are coming to you on the Conservative Commandos radio network, which is broadcast all across this great nation. And also, you can watch us now on anytime you want to see the Conservative Commandos, we are on the AUN TV network as well. And we are carried around the entire world, with the possible exception of a couple totalitarian regimes, on Al Gore's amazing internet. So don't go away. Sharron and I will be right back.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America, and get this. Did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. We are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Network, and we would like to shout out to our listeners in Jacksonville, Tampa and the Villages, Florida, Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada, Macon, Georgia, Lancaster and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Boulder and Colorado Springs, Colorado, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Long Beach, California, and now you can hear us in the Alexandria and Washington, D.C. area. I'm here with my co-host, George Landrith. We've had one of those things that happens once in a while in radio, and that is that our guest, David Horowitz, who is the founder of the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the author of many books, including Dark Agenda, The War to Destroy Christian America, was unable to be with us today for technical difficulties, and we'll have him on at another time. But George and I would like to go ahead and discuss a couple of articles that he's written because we thought they were timely and that you needed to hear what David Horowitz had to say about persecutors and the persecuted. Democratic bigots will destroy the country. We talk about bigotry, but it usually is aimed at us rather than aimed back at the people who that it's coming from. And George, I just remember that old adage, when there's a finger pointing at you, there's three pointing back. And that's what this looks like to me. They've been railing at us for almost 10 years now, maybe a little longer. I know when I ran in 2010 against Terry Reid, I was accused of being a racist and a bigot. And those folks were really interesting in that they thought they could read my mind. We know that she said this, but what she really meant was this, and it's very bigoted. So it's just very interesting to me that they just continue to bang this drum. Is it because it's catching some? Are they catching steam with it? I mean, do people really believe this? I feel like, the whole thing has kind of lost some of its momentum. People just they're not listening to the mainstream media anymore because it's so biased.
I think you're right. I think it loses its power over time, but it isn't without impact. They do it because it gets them at least some things they want. Certainly many of their adherent followers that are kind of obedient and mind-numbed and don't think a lot just accept that. So you'll hear people say things like, "Oh yeah, conservatives are all racists," but I do agree with you that increasingly, basically, if everyone's a racist, no one is the problem, and I think increasingly people are starting to realize that. My kids all learned this at a young age because I taught it to them, which was, what's a racist? It's a conservative who's beating a liberal in a conversation or a debate. As soon as you start to get the upper hand in a conversation or a debate, they're going to accuse you of being some sort of bigot or racist. That's just how it works. An example, Pete Buttigieg, he was a mayor in Indiana. Yeah, there we go, Indiana. And of course, the vice president used to be the governor. Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana. They had a good working relationship. Mike Pence is a nice man. Mike Pence can disagree with you and disagree with everything you say that you stand for, but still be nice to you as a person. He's a committed Christian. And it's interesting. So Buttigieg has been like picking a fight with Mike Pence, acting like Mike Pence is the focus of all bigotry and evil in the country, and talking about how horrible Mike Pence has been to him. And then they'll show I forget where it was I saw this. It might have been on Tucker's show, but he showed some of the he said, watch this snarling Mike Pence talk about how much he can't stand Buttigieg. No wonder he doesn't like Mike Pence. And then they show Mike Pence saying, yeah, we've worked a lot. When I was the governor and just a really good guy, I always appreciated working with him. He was always very professional and I believe was sincere in his attempts to serve his constituents. It's like, do you see the snarling hatred coming out of this? I mean, that's the kind of garbage they play, that you can make fun of them. And Pete Buttigieg is a lying piece of rotting fecal matter when he talks about the vice president. There's no truth to that at all, but that's the game they play. And that lets you know the kind of leadership they're going to provide. They do the same thing when it comes to Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A hires people of every possible persuasion. They serve people of every possible persuasion. But if you interview the CEO and owner of the company and ask him his position on political issues, he will take the conservative stance. And for that, he is obviously, and the company is obviously hateful. And these people are purposefully lying. They don't even believe what they're saying. They're disingenuous, but it suits their purposes. Pete Buttigieg doesn't believe Mike Pence is trying to ruin him or kill him. But he talks about that way now because it suits his purposes. He thinks he can win votes from a bunch of crazy leftists. So that's my problem with all of this, is these people are name callers and they're liars. It would be different if they honestly believed this stuff, but I know for a fact they don't. Their followers may believe it because they've been talked into it and they're not very, very, very well informed, but the people who perpetrate these lies know darn well what they're up to. They are lying sacks of rotting fecal matter, and they should be held in contempt by the American public.
Well, certainly it doesn't bode well for them. I thought this was an interesting epitaph, if you will, on the article that David wrote, where he says, Identity politics, which fuels its war on Christians, is killing the Democrat Party. It's killing the Democrat Party if candidates like Pete Buttigieg, rather than Mike Pence, emerge from this war victorious. And I don't see how that doesn't happen. You know, being a woman, we fought in the 60s. There was this feminist war that went on, and the war was for equality in jobs and job opportunities. And actually in the 50s and 60s, there was a disparity there. My mother-in-law would get passed up for bank promotions because she was a woman. She would train men under her, and then they would become her bosses. They would be the ones in charge, and she just kept training them and never got that pay raise, and she was the breadwinner for her family. So there was a disparity there, but she didn't get equality in the workplace by being a victim. She never called her bank and said, you know, you're discriminating, you are absolutely warring against me as a woman. She took it in her stride. She just did the very best she could, and she became one of those really good employees that they were sorry to see go when she retired. So this is kind of an interesting idea. Also, David says Buttigieg compounded this travesty by presenting himself. So the travesty of the lie, he is compounding by presenting himself as a victim of persecution, even though far from making him a victim, the fact that he is gay or homosexual is what has catapulted him as a mayor of a small and failing city to being one of the top 3 candidates of the Democrat presidential nomination. I don't want a victim as a president. How do you feel about that, George? I think I want someone strong, not someone who's weak and whiny.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I think the whole idea that the victimhood card is somehow key. They're all racing against each other to see who can be the biggest victim. These are people who are Rhodes Scholars. You've got Cory Booker, you know, very privileged background, very best schools, etc. And they're all trying to line up as if their life's been very challenging and difficult and hard, and you know, somebody's been oppressing them. And it's just, you know, I'm sorry, this is simply a joke. You got to cut it out. And I think that's why they won the election, because it's not even legitimate. It's just this kind of silly exercise of finding some grievance and pretending that you were mistreated.
Well, we have Creepy Joe, who's in the lead now in that Democrat nomination fight or race. And now we have Buttigieg, the victim, who's the weak and whiny victim that's coming along and pulling this card. I just don't see that they've got much there to hold on to if they continue in this vein, and yet they don't have anything else really to talk about, do they, George? I haven't heard issues. I guess that's what has really boggled my mind.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue they brought up is the Green New Deal, and they don't want to talk about it or vote on it. Everything else, you know, other than that, they're just, it's all I'm a victim. Who's the biggest victim?
Well, and that's interesting that you bring up Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because you know, we've talked about here in Nevada, we laughingly joke about California being the land of nuts, fruits, flakes, and crazy folk. And it seems like the Democrat Party has now taken up residence in that crazy land of California, that leftist place where, you know, it's okay to be nuts. You know, I just don't understand their thinking. They just seem to be driving farther and farther into a place where most thinking people just can't go anymore.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Maybe in the next segment we should talk about that some more, because I know we're up against the clock, but that's what you said is exactly the truth.
Well, we are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and AM/FM 24/7. Now you can watch us on the AUN TV network in Northern California. And we'll be right back, George and I, after this break.
AM/FM 24/7 Roku channel broadcasts all of our shows on demand. To ensure reliability, we store and stream our content on the same servers as Netflix and Amazon. Our Roku channel is free to use, and anyone owning one of the more than 10 million Roku devices can watch our channel at no cost whatsoever. If you have a television show or are thinking about producing a show, you can be a part of AM/FM 24/7's Roku channel. Watch our great shows on your Roku device. It's free and more reliable than cable TV. Are you stuck with a timeshare? Did you attend the presentation and were seduced and enticed into buying that great vacation and investment? Now you're in the terrible position of trying to figure out a way to get out of that mess. You're not alone. For over 15 years, BuyYourTimeshare.com has been helping people like yourself get out of timeshare ownership. The fact is there is no resale market. Unscrupulous telemarketers call you and say they have buyers waiting, and the next thing that happens is you give them hundreds of dollars for an ad, and you'll never hear from them again. Another fact is that an identical timeshare to yours is being offered on eBay for $1, and no one is buying it. If you want out of your timeshare, I urge you to go to buyyourtimeshare.com or call them at 877-94-HELP-ME. That number again is 877-94-HELP-ME. Buyyourtimeshare.com. That's buyyourtimeshare.com. 877-94-HELP-ME.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. We're coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, and if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our websites, ccrsnetwork.com or ccrshow.com. Also, please like us, friend us, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Of course, we're never sure whether we're going to be on Facebook from day to day, but we like to see you come there anyway. George, we were discussing the problem with the Democrat Party and with their candidates. We discussed briefly, I guess, the leader there, Joe Biden, Creepy Joe. He's blaming Bernie Sanders for putting that label on him. He thinks he brought up the whole scandalous way that he treats women, but obviously it's out there for everybody to look at, and it seems that the party is attacking itself on this. We've got some ladies there that think we need to have the first woman president, and they're really kind of throwing their guys under the bus in order to accomplish that. And then we have this Pete Buttigieg, who has been treated nothing but kindly by our vice president, but now that he's in the running, he's decided that he's a victim somehow, and that Mike Pence is the perpetrator of all bigotry where it comes to his homosexuality. And yet that's the thing that has catapulted him. That's the thing that the crazies in Hollywood really embrace. They like this idea that they've got somebody of this persuasion now running. So, he wants to be the victim. And like I said, I don't.
Well, he's certainly not running on the great way he's run his city of South Bend, Indiana. I mean, that city has got lots of problems, and he can't possibly run on his record. So I guess he's going to run on his choice of spouse. Okay. Fine. Well,
and that spouse is not a long-term relationship, as I understand it. They've only been spouses. I hate to even use the word marriage when it comes to this. They've only been spouses for about 6 months. So, Mr. Victim,
they're
Mr.
newlyweds.
Buttigieg, yeah. I guess that's right. But we were talking about that in the previous segment about how far the Democrat Party is going, and we've been discussing an article written by David Horowitz, "The Persecutors and the Persecuted, Democrat Bigots Will Destroy the Country." And of course, his last statement in this article is that identity politics, which fuels its war on Christians, is killing the Democrat Party, and it will kill America too if candidates like Pete Buttigieg rather than Mike Pence emerge from this war victorious. So he's predicting if the Democrat Party has its way and wins, that we will see a real decline in America. I want to point out that I'm not using the word democratic when it comes to the Democrats. They're anything but democratic. I don't think that their agenda is democratic. I don't think they believe in our democracy. I think that a lot of what has been going on in this country only goes to underline the fact that they are what they say they are, socialists, progressive socialists.
No, I agree with you on that. I think that if you look at the various candidates, these are people who believe in an autocracy. They believe in the idea that a few people should be the ones to determine. They want to determine what we can talk about, what words we can use, what subject matter we can talk about. They all kinds of stuff. It's not just they want to determine what the tax rate should be, or where the next highway should be built. They want to determine. They want to be able to tell you what you can believe, where you can go to church. They've already talked about the idea that religious freedom needs to take a back seat to certain social constructs. So apparently freedom of conscience isn't that important to them. We know freedom of speech isn't, because they now have been describing, as we talked we've talked about this many times, but bottom line is that the whole idea is that certain speech you can't talk about. It's not allowed. You can't believe. And I remember writing years ago an article about how they referred to climate deniers, and then that's where the phrase came from early on, and then they talked about having Nuremberg-style trials for climate deniers because of the environmental devastation that they were foisting upon the world, and so they had to be punished in these war crimes tribunals. That's the level that they want to control speech. They want to make your political opinion a crime. Oh, you're pro-life? Oh, yeah, that's a crime. Oh, you're for less regulation? Oh, I'm sorry, that's a crime. It's, and yet they do want people who've committed, violent felonies to be able to vote, of course, but not you, because after all, you go to church on Sunday and you go to work on Monday, and we can't have that going on in this country. You're what's wrong with the country. We don't want any of that. And I just, I kind of think to myself, if these people can cobble together a majority, it tells me the country is profoundly sick. Deep, deep, deep sickness. Because these people are not good people. These people mean to rule you. They don't mean to govern. They mean to rule you. And they do not consider you a citizen. They consider you a subject. And, there's a reason why they've always are soft on people like on the communists and the various dictators around the globe. And it's because they're their soulmates. It's just the truth. It's, somebody say, how dare you say that? I'm sorry. I know that's hate speech because I've said something that challenges their paradigm. But the fact is, that is simply the way it is.
It is simply the way it is. We are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and the AM/FM 24/7. And now you can listen to us also on the land in Washington, D.C. and Alexandria. I think that's great that we have a beacon of light now showing there in the nation's capital with Conservative Commandos radio show. George and I will be right back after this message with more.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Sharron Angle here with my co-host, George Landrith. And if you would like to join us on the internet at CCR Show or conservativecommandosradioshow.com. That's where we post all of our programming, and we'd love to have you check us out. George, we're ready with our next guest, Liz Peek, who is a Fox contributor and a columnist for The Hill and FoxNews.com. She's also a weekly guest on several Fox business shows, including Varney and Company, Making Money, and with Charles Payne, and After the Bell, Evening Edit, and appears frequently on the Neil Cavuto Coast to Coast show. Liz was a top-ranked research analyst covering oil field companies and the director of international research for her firm. Liz, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to join you.
Well, we're really pleased to have you, Liz. And we want to talk to you about an article that you wrote. The trade deal failed because Beijing hasn't earned our trust. I love this article. It's got 5 things that you point out is the problem. There are 5 things everyone should know about our trade war with China. I just love bullet points. So if we could start out there with your 5 points, that would be great. Talk to us about how China has lost our trust.
Well, I think, first of all, I wrote this in the aftermath of the seeming collapse of trade talks, this most latest round. And I think everyone, first of all, needs to understand that President Trump, I believe, is not going to back away from these trade demands that he has made. I think that, it's something that he campaigned on. He's very committed to it. And, I think President Xi of China made a mistake in assuming that President Trump was worried enough about his political prospects going into the election in 2020 that he would not want to risk an economic bump. And frankly, we're seeing an economic bump. It turns out that, just data out today that both China and the U.S. experienced some slowing in April, slowing that was certainly worse than expected. But I think it's pretty clear that Trump is going to kind of stick with this no matter what. And frankly, I think a lot of people applaud that. A lot of even Democrats have applauded that. But that's kind of, I think, a miscalculation, let's say, that the Chinese made. Number 2, the vice premier of China, who has been leading the talks from their point of view and was up until this latest visit dubbed a special envoy, meaning he had authority, presumably, to act on behalf of President Xi Jinping. He talked about the changes that they had, Trump has talked about how they reneged on various things we'd already agreed to. Those changes, according to this fellow Liu He, were perfectly natural, and that they were reluctant to accede to some of our demands as a matter of principle. And I think Americans need to kind of sit back and think about that. What we're asking them to do, mainly, and at least importantly, is to stop stealing our intellectual property. Apparently, that is a matter of principle for the Chinese. And I think that sort of underlies really what is at issue here, that their standards and expectations just are not the same as ours. Apparently, the problem that arose that led to them reneging on the agreement is that a number of things that they had agreed to had to be codified by changes to Chinese law. And when that prospect was raised with Xi Jinping, evidently he balked, because that meant going to their legislature and asking for changes in laws. But and even though that's a rubber stamp legislature, one party, we have to remember that Xi Jinping has just in the last several years gathered unto himself an enormous amount of power. He has taken responsibility for almost everything in the country now, including the economy. And so I think as a matter of face, he was reluctant to go to the legislature, from which there has already been some critical commentary about his handling of the economy, to say, yes, these are the changes we want to make, and we need you to do that. So that was a problem. They wanted to solve it by saying to us, look, we don't really need to change the law, you just have to trust us. And everyone should remember the very nice scene in the Rose Garden just a few years ago with President Xi reassuring President Obama that China's activities in the South China Sea were neither militaristic nor aggressive. We know now that they are both, and that he was basically lying at the time. We cannot trust China. We should not trust China. They have, for over 2 decades, cheated and swindled the United States and, by the way, the European partners that they have, or trading partners. So that's just a no-go zone for the United States. We have now, of course, had retaliatory tariffs come from China, and the market swooned as a result, because markets don't like uncertainty, and there's no real certainty of this thing getting back on track. I think it's good to remember that this does hurt China more than it hurts us. 20% of their economy comes from exports versus 12% of us, but also that kind of understates the case. Their exports, because they're so large a factor in their economy, are about 5 times ours. So yes, it'll hurt us, and they've targeted specifically our agriculture industries. But I think that the damage done to their industrial production, their consumer spending, and so forth, is a little more problematic right now. We are on sounder footing in our economy, believe it or not. I know that people don't always understand that, than they are. They have been financing their growth in recent years with enormous amounts of additional debt. They have some 60 million residential units that are empty. They have built all kinds of things for which there is no demand. No economy really can continue down that route forever. And, at the end of the day, it's a managed economy without the freedom and entrepreneurship that we have, and that's why they have to steal our property. But if we stop letting them do that, that I think really slows down their progress. And they know that. One of the things that the Chinese officials, economic officials, determined in March when they sort of laid out their economic program was that China definitely needs more foreign direct investment in various industries. Well, guess what? That's not going to come from us the way things are going. And I think Europe also is beginning to look pretty skeptically at the attractiveness of investing in China. And finally, it's important to remember and to point out that the trade relationship between the U.S. and China has been skewed in their favor for years. I think this confrontation needed to happen about 15 years ago. I was writing about it at the time. It was pretty clear that American corporations were blinded by the seeming attractiveness of taking advantage of cheap labor in China and a burgeoning middle class, blinded to the cost. And the cost really was that they agreed to terms like 50-50 joint venture local partners that basically open the door to China expropriating an enormous amount of our intellectual capital. This is really a serious thing that corporate America has done to the country. I think only in the last 5 years have they begun to understand that that was a very short-sighted decision. But in any event, we have, Trump is totally right, President Trump, that they have taken advantage of us for years, and why wouldn't they? We never balked, and now I think it's time to put an end to it. So that's what the president's trying to do.
Well, I think it's really interesting that they are believing, I guess, the left-wing media here in our country, they're believing that somehow Trump isn't popular and that this is not a popular idea with the American people, and that somehow if they wait him out, he'll lose his election, his next election. But that isn't exactly how the reality is here in the United States, is it, Liz?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, look, they can read the polls. I'm sure they have, they're probably accessing the Washington Post, New York Times, etc., and they're hearing a lot of criticism about the president and his approach to trade, and they feel they can wait him out. What they don't understand is that should the Democrats take power, because they understand now why they lost all those voters in the Midwest, all those blue-collar workers who really were incensed about Democrats' indifference to the millions of jobs that fled the United States. Democrats are onto that now. They understand that they have to win those states back to win the White House. They're not going to very easily succumb to the appeal of doing business with China either. So they can definitely damage the president's prospects by refusing to bend and by letting him proceed with higher tariffs, which will, undoubtedly slow our economy some and theirs too. But I think there's a limit to how much they are going to really want to do that. As I mentioned, a lot of their growth has been fueled by debt. A lot of the debt has financed investments which are unproductive over time. That's really going to hurt the Chinese. Their stock markets have gotten slammed even though they have told their financial institutions to step up and buy stocks. Their currency is down, which again may be somewhat manipulated, but nonetheless that's not a very positive thing for the Chinese people. I don't think this can go on forever. So we'll see. I think what our trade reps have to do, Lighthizer and Navarro, is to give the Chinese an off-ramp. They have to lay out for the Chinese how they can accede to our demands and make it look like that's what they wanted to do all along. Again, this economic plan that was rolled out in March kind of went a pretty good way towards making that clear. In particular, it was pretty clear that the Chinese wanted not only to see increased direct investment from overseas, they also want their consumers to be spending. And this kind of uncertainty, the Chinese people are pretty sensitive to things that go on related to their country outside their country, like trade disputes. They don't totally trust their government. Why would they? Because after all, the sort of openness of the last decade has only been for a decade. So I think that they could underestimate Trump's resolve and also the inclination of Democrats to fix this thing. I don't think they care.
Well, we have been talking with Liz Peek about her article about China, and we need to go to a break right now. We are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and AM FM 24/7. And now you can watch us on the AUN TV network in Northern California. We'll be right back with our guest Liz Peek talking about the trade deal failed because Beijing hasn't earned our trust.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America. And get this, did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos. The show is now not just a radio show, but a television show as well, thanks to the AUN TV network. And, of course, thanks to the Conservative Commandos radio network all over the country. And always thanks to Al Gore's amazing internet that carries us everywhere else. But I'm George Landrith with Sharron Engel. We're your co-host today, and we're glad you stuck through the break. We've been talking with Liz Peek, and she is just, as always, insightful, interesting, and educational. But before I get back to Liz, I just want to remind you, if you want to hear a rebroadcast or view one, go to our website, ccrsnetwork.com, ccrshow.com. It's all there, and you can get more information and whatever you could be looking for that would be important, it's there. But we've been talking with Liz Peek, and of course you are used to seeing her on Fox News, where she is often there as an expert on the economy and to give you insights, and that's why we have her on our show as well. But you've also probably read her stuff. It's on the Hill. It's at Fox News. She like us is everywhere. So, Liz, we're glad you're still here and that you stuck around. I really enjoyed your article because I thought you really broke it down well. One, I think you're right. Donald Trump's not going to back down on this. And I'm typically a person who, being for, free markets, I generally don't like tariffs. But to some of my friends who are kind of purist on this, they say that this is terrible, he's making a big mistake. But I kind of view this the way I view chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is not something you do for fun. It's not something you do unless the alternative is worse. And I would argue the president is treating an imbalance that has existed for a long time, as you mentioned, that should have been dealt with a long time ago. And so it's going to take some tough medicine to recalibrate China's expectations, because their view is, hey, we've been able to rob these people blind forever. Let's keep doing that. And he's trying to make it clear, no, that's not new sheriff in town, we're not doing it anymore. And so I think you're dead right on that. I don't know if you have if you think my analogy of chemotherapy is fair or not, but for someone who thinks that tariffs aren't ideal, my point is I don't think the stuff that chemotherapy does to you is ideal either, but it's awesome if it's trying to save you from cancer.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, short-term pain, for long-term gain, that's what Trump is advocating. Obviously, the people who are being hurt worse or our farmers, because the Chinese have targeted the agricultural industry in the United States, knowing that those states that are agricultural states mostly do support President Trump. So they're going to his hometown, if you will. And, of course, you saw that with Kentucky bourbon and, other things that kind of hurt close to close to home. I think the president and the White House is going to try and figure out how to recycle some of those tariff dollars into the agriculture. Farmers already have gotten a special program to help them out. I think they're going to do another special program. But again, it'll be interesting to see how many companies actually do start now to change their supply chains. Some companies have. In the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen low-value manufacturing, things like T-shirts and cheap toys, move out of China increasingly to Vietnam, to Thailand, other neighboring countries, because labor rates in China have gone up. And they've gone up because, first of all, their economy has grown very, very rapidly, and secondly, because they, like so many countries, are facing sort of a demographic cliff. The workforce in China presumably is presumed to have peaked, if not last year, the year before. And so there isn't like this endless pool of labor that people can begin to draw on. And the result of that, of course, is that wages have started to move higher. So companies already have been reassessing their involvement in China. Some, like Apple, are really sunk in. And, I don't know where Apple's stock closed today, but they're clearly a company that's going to be pretty badly hurt if this thing goes on further. But there are many companies that aren't hurt at all. And so, either because they're mainly selling to domestic buyers in the United States or because they don't manufacture in China. So this is not, we'll get through this. Most of the estimates, like Societe Generale, came out, I think, on yesterday or Monday, with estimates of what the impact would be on GDP from existing tariffs, the tariffs that we now have in place and the retaliatory ones on 60 billion of U.S. goods from China. And it was like hurting our economy by 0.25, a quarter of a percentage point. If you're growing at 2.5 percentage points, or 2.5%, that's not so extreme. If growth slows like it did last month, so it's down around 1%, then that begins to show up. In China, the impact's about twice that. But again, if you're growing 6%, it's just not that deadly. So, this confrontation, of course, is more than trade. It's about China's increasing aggression militarily and economically, not just on trade, but also on things like the Belt and Road Project, the Made in China 2025 project, things where China is clearly using their financial and economic muscle to move them into a more strategic and important position. Belt and Road really kind of gives them access to ports all over the world. That's a very important strategic thing for a growing Navy and also for a growing mercantile base. And then, some of the other things they're doing are just sort of allowing them to move up the value chain in manufacturing and up the technology chain so that they're really now pressing the United States. And they are. 5G is a good example of that. Artificial intelligence, we hear there's speculation that they're actually ahead of U.S. on artificial intelligence. So I think the U.S. is not just holding their own on trade or wanting to hold their own, but they're also sort of saying, well, wait a minute, you've stolen all this stuff from us. Now you look likely to overtake us in some of these very key future industries. We can't really let that happen.
Right. You make a good point about the fact that the premier kind of signaled that for them stealing IP is very natural. And I would argue, of course it is. That's how they've tried to close the gap mostly. If you look at their next generation fighter, if you ignore the colors painted on the tail, it looks the same to me.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
It's a clone. That's what they do. I mean, they basically, and I think what's actually encouraging a little bit is that more and more people now are talking very openly about the China stealing and spying on us. Companies are quicker to report hacks. You know, the Chinese were behind one of the biggest hacks in our history, where they broke into the database of the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, which is a government bureau basically overseeing the collection of government employee data, but includes all of our classified people. In other words, my son, who is in the government, who's been an intelligence officer, all his information went to the Chinese, and that was replicated for 22 million Americans. Think about that. So we know, I mean, again, that wasn't this year, it wasn't last year. This stuff's been going on for a long time. We have not responded forcefully enough. Partly that's the government's fault, in my view, and partly it's corporate America's fault because they've just let it happen.
Yeah. Well, we are getting close to the break. So, Liz, I want to ask that you let people know the best way to follow all your work. When you're going to be on a show, the articles you've written, all things Liz Peek. How do they keep track of you?
Well, you're very nice to ask. I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Liz Peek, LIZPEEK, and I really enjoy hearing from people on Twitter. We have a pretty active Twitter group, and it's kind of fun, so I encourage that. I also have a website, lizpeek.com, and all my material goes up there. But on Twitter, I always announce my television appearances, which are kind of fun. And I'm on a show called Bulls and Bears, actually, which is an hour-long panel show. I'm on Monday and Thursday. It's on every day, 5 to 6 on Fox Business. And if you haven't watched, it's really kind of a terrific, lively, smart panel show, and I encourage everyone to tune in.
Sounds great. I know I follow you on Twitter. It's always
thank you.
Glad I do. So our listeners should as well. But we are up against the break. I just want to remind our listeners, you're listening to Conservative Commandos. I'm George Landrith, and she is Sharron Engel. And we're coming to the Conservative Commandos radio network, which is broadcast all across this great nation, and on the AUN TV network, and also, of course, everywhere else on Al Gore's amazing internet. Don't go away. We will be right back.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
Well, George, that's just about a wrap-up for this show. Like you said in the last segment, then that's the way it is. Would you thank our guests for us?
Absolutely. Had a great conversation with Paul Driessen, just always an intelligent guy, talking about the how they've, fear and loathing and the intolerance that exists, and how the climate change debate has become this disingenuous debate. And while we didn't end up with Dave Horowitz on the show, I think his article really did spur on a good conversation, so I appreciate that as well. And of course, Liz Peek is always, when it comes to business, facts and figures and information, and just the way she presents it clearly, you can't do much better than Liz Peek.
That's right. Where can we follow you, George Landrith?
Easy enough. On Twitter, it's just G Landrith. That's Landrith with my first initial in front of it. So Glandrith, I guess. And then, of course, Frontiers of Freedom, our website is easy. It's ff.org. 2 F's like frontiersfreedom.org.
Well, and you can always follow George on the Conservative Commandos radio show at CCRSnetwork.com and CCRshow.com. I'm there too, as well as at SharronEngle.com. But for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow on TV and radio.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said the world was going to end in 12 years unless we did something dramatic like her Green New Deal. Now, she says she's only joking, and if you believed it, if you believed her, you're dumber than a sea sponge. Bill Nye, the science guy, has a meltdown over global warming, and we'll look at the case of Gibson Bakery versus Oberlin College. I'm Bobby Eberly. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, remember when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was pitching her Green New Deal? It was a restructuring of everything, every element of society and the economy, Medicare for all, education for all these things, in an effort to help the environment. But what was the motivation behind it? What was her driving force? Remember that? It was that we had to act now because we only had 12 years left before the end of the world, before changes would come that we could not turn around. Is the point of no return. Here's a clip just to remind you.
Millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it?
And then she also put out this tweet. Climate change is here and we've got a deadline. 12 years left to cut emissions in half. A Green New Deal is our plan for a world and a future worth fighting for. How did we get here? What's at stake and where are we going? Please watch and share widely. Okay, that led into a video which we covered on a previous program, but here's just a little clip.
When I was elected to Congress, the world's leading climate scientists declared another emergency. They told us that we had 12 years left to cut our emissions in half, or hundreds of millions of people would be more likely to face food and water shortages, poverty, and death. 12 years to change everything.
All right, but what isn't it only that? She also went on Instagram during one of her live stories, drinking wine and building something most likely, and she said this about the 12-year prediction.
How many years until the world ends again? We have 12 years left to cut emissions by at least 50%, if not more. And for everyone who wants to make a joke about that, you may laugh, but your grandkids will not.
All right, well, guess what? Now she says, hey, man, I was only kidding. That was just a joke. Take a look at what she just tweeted the other day. This is a technique of the GOP to take dry humor and sarcasm literally and fact check it, like the world ending in 12 years thing. You'd have to have the social intelligence of a sea sponge to think it's literal. But the GOP is basically Dwight from The Office, so who knows? All right, so let's repeat. If you believed what she was saying, which she said over and over again, you're dumber than a sea sponge. And guys, this is where I need some help, and you can help me with this, because I always thought that a sea sponge looked like this. Or maybe even this. Well, it turns out that a sea sponge actually looks like this.
This is our final chance. The scientists are absolutely unanimous on this, that we have no more than 12 years to take incredibly bold action on this crisis.
So there you have it, Beto the Sea Sponge and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stepping back on what she said over and over and over again. I guess getting fact-checked by the Associated Press and having everybody else know that what you're saying is ridiculous and untrue kind of wears down on you after a little bit, and now it's just all a joke. Well, here's someone who wasn't joking. Bill Nye, the science guy, was fired up. On the program Last Week Tonight with John Oliver on HBO, Bill Nye was on, and he was talking about global warming, and here is how his little skit started.
I've got an experiment for you, safety glasses on. By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fire.
All right, and then he talked about the remedies to fix global warming, and of course, they aren't cheap. They have a cost, and he said this.
Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it? Safety glasses off.
I mean, what is going on with him? And here's one thing. He talks about nothing is free. The reason he brings up the cost is because he's trying to hit people with, there is a way to solve this. It costs something, and it's something like the Green New Deal. It costs a complete restructuring in the economy. It costs wealth redistribution. It costs taxpayers billions and billions and billions of dollars to adopt a socialist economy, all in the name of protecting the environment. It goes way beyond just protecting the environment. And as I was putting this segment together, I realized that even more because I looked up her old FAQ that went out with her Green New Deal proposal, the one that talked about farting cows and things like that. And in it, she mentioned CCUS, which is the carbon capture, utilization, and storage. These are technologies used to help existing factories or other existing industries to actually scrub or clean the CO2 out of the air. And in her paragraph on the FAQ, they just ignored it. They just said, it's not really feasible. And why? Why not invest in technologies where private industries or colleges can help develop even better means of CO2 scrubbing and start to implement that? Why? Because that is more like a private sector solution. We wouldn't have to change anything. We could keep the factories that we have. All we're doing is scrubbing the CO2 out of the air. But that doesn't involve a socialist economy. That doesn't involve wealth redistribution. That doesn't mean taking over major sectors of the economy, which is what the Green New Deal is all about and what the leftists truly, really want. So Bill Nye can have his rant, but we see through it, and there's no way we're going to adopt a Green New Deal and restructure everything when we can care about the environment, we can care about cleaning things up, and do it in a way that makes sense. You don't have to adopt socialism to care about the environment. All right, now I want to talk about a really fascinating case. This is Gibson's Bakery versus Oberlin College. It's a trial that just started this week. And for those of you who don't know, Oberlin College is it's a small left-wing college that has been in the news a number of times for just its faculty and its students as far left-wing as can be. And this story involves the day after or shortly after Trump was elected, there's a bakery that has existed since the late 1800s in Oberlin and has an affiliation with the university, has provided them food for 100 years. A black man and 2 black women went into the store, robbed it. They shoplifted some wine, and one of the owners chased the suspects out, and there was a scuffle. Police were called, and arrests were made. All right. Then it was later solved or put to rest with a plea deal. These 3 suspects pled guilty and also issued a statement that the restaurant or the bakery people, the Gibsons, didn't act with racial profiling or anything like that. Basically, yeah, we were stealing, they caught us, we're guilty, that's it. All right. Well, what happened in between is what has led to this trial now, because within a day after the arrests were made, Oberlin College, and as we are seeing in the trial, faculty and some administrators were up in arms, and not that 3 people stole something from a business, but they were after Gibsons. They were after them for acting as racists, basically saying that they are the criminals and the actual criminals are the victims. Shortly after this incident went down, this flyer was circulated. Take a look at this. It says, "Don't buy. This is a racist establishment with a long account of racial profiling and discrimination." All right, within a day, the student government at Oberlin also got into the mix. So I guess after one day, you can talk to witnesses, talk to the suspects, look at the police report, and solve the case. That's what they did. They solved the case. They put forward a resolution, and here is some of what they said. Said, a black student was chased and assaulted at Gibson's after being accused of stealing. Several other students attempting to prevent the assaulted student from sustaining further injury were arrested and held by Oberlin Police Department. In the midst of all this, Gibson employees were never detained and were given preferential treatment by police officers. Gibson's has a history of racial profiling and discriminatory treatment of students and residents alike. Now, we could dissect that just right there. I mean, there's so many things that they said that was wrong. But here then they got to their resolutions. What are they going to do? What do they stand for? And here's what they said. The students of Oberlin College immediately cease all support, financial and otherwise, of Gibson's Food Market and Bakery. The students of Oberlin College call on President Marvin Krislov, Dean of Students Meredith Raimondo, and all other administrators and the general faculty to condemn by written promulgation the treatment of students of color by Gibson's Food Market and Bakery. All right, well, this was all too much, because what happened was there were protests outside the bakery. There were statements like the flyer you just saw and others over and over again accusing this bakery of being racist, of being discriminatory. And as we're learning in the trial, during some of these protests, Oberlin faculty, this Dean of Students, Meredith Raimondo, was involved in passing out flyers and printing the flyers on Oberlin College printers. And here's just some of the report of what's been going on in the trial that is just absolutely fascinating. This is by Daniel McGraw over at Legal Insurrection. It said, police officer Victor Ortiz also settled an issue that has caused some dispute and consternation in Oberlin. Some in the Oberlin College community have expressed that one of the Gibson employees, Alan Gibson, chased the 3 shoplifters, 1 male, 2 females, and beat them up unfairly and illegally outside the store. In short, the school supporters have pushed interpretation of all of this that the shoplifters were the victims of a crime, not Gibson's. Quite the opposite happened, Ortiz testified, as he was one of the first on the scene, and the police report backs him up on this. When we got there, we saw 2 young ladies standing over Alan Gibson and throwing haymakers at him, Ortiz said. The 2 women would stand over him and kick him and then crouch down and throw punches. As we got closer, we could see Alan Gibson on his back with the male on top of him, punching him. All right. And so that was testimony from the other day. And I am going to include links to the day-by-day testimony, trial days, because Daniel McGraw has done an outstanding job and of covering this and writing it up. It's just fascinating because, again, what we see is a college being complicit and encouraging the actions of the students. So if these colleges are going to be left-wing breeding grounds, if they are going to focus on indoctrination, then you have to think that they are somehow could be held responsible for those actions. If they are helping, encourage this idea that this bakery is racist, that they discriminate, when we'll find out in the trial if it turns out that they're not, but Oberlin officials, faculty encouraged it, then this is going to be a very big case and can have ramifications for conservatives across the country when dealing with left-wing institutions like Oberlin College. So we'll keep on it. I have links in the description below to the day-by-day trial coverage from Daniel McGraw. Please check it out. Folks, please hit the subscribe button and then hit that bell. And I hope you have a great day. We'll see you on Friday. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-Minute News Hour.